Weather portion of AgweekTV now. Following the big warm-up of last week, that first week in November, we're headed back into a colder weather pattern, but it doesn't look too harsh. Not nearly as far below average as the last half of October was. Generally speaking, the northern plains region still looking to stay primarily on the dry side at the coasts of the country. The East Coast will be fairly rainy, and it looks like the Pacific Northwest, maybe even parts of California, will be getting at least some rainfall, and there's one significant snowstorm to talk about. Now, we talked about a potential snowstorm in last week's segment. This kind of a southwest to northeast pattern as the colder weather builds into the northwest is going to kick out a snowstorm, but it will be well to the northwest of most of the northern plains. We'll take a look at that in the precipitation in a minute. But the chillier weather is moving on in. It's not going to be extremely cold because there isn't going to be snow on the ground over much of the northern plains region. It will be kind of cold. Some of the days are likely to be below freezing, some a little bit above. Warm weather will continue down across the deep south. If you want heat, you're going to have to go to Mexico or Florida or the Caribbean, in this part of the world anyway. And frigid weather is still kind of lurking up in the high latitudes. It looks like as we get to the second week of this period, that will begin to trek southward just a bit. Note the cold in the northern Rockies, most of the Rockies really, over through the Hudson Bay region, really beginning to get a grip, but it's not penetrating much of the United States except in the higher elevations. This jet stream just not of a shape that's going to go up and get that really cold air and drop it southward. Looking ahead to the second week, as I mentioned, the frigid weather will begin to make a little bit of an appearance, staying mostly way up north. And for much of the United States, the pattern is going to generally be sort of not that cold, slightly above average for the middle part of November. And it's going to mean some of these days in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, and the Great Lakes, a lot of the days are going to be above freezing, although not much above freezing, 30s and 40s, things like that. The cold weather will be out here to the northwest of the Great Plains, where there will likely be snow on the ground. And that's because that's where the snowstorm is going to be. As the cold weather begins to build down into the states, you're going to see an area of snow break out of Montana up across Alberta, Saskatchewan. That storm, which could be a fierce one, is going to make its way up toward the west side of Hudson Bay. But a lot of North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota is going to be fairly dry. Eastern part of the country will have some rain, and on the west side of that snow in the west, there will be some cold rain in the Pacific Northwest. Moving ahead to the second week then, it's still going to be fairly wet in the Pacific Northwest, still fairly dry in the middle.